Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Rhynestone Podcast. My name is Driskell. I am the CEO and founder of Rhynestone Productions, which is a virtual music studio that helps artists take demos and turn them into completed professional works. And the Rhynestone Podcast is an extension of a lot of my philosophies at Rhynestone, which is if we want to learn, let's learn from the best. Let's go and talk to people who are doing interesting things, who are making a path forward in music and are actually doing the creative work and figuring out the business side of things. So much stuff in music is hidden behind the walls of gatekeeping, and I hate that. And I want to learn, and I want to gain knowledge, and I want to pass that knowledge and information on to you, which is why I have this podcast. And it's been such a great platform because we've gotten to learn from so many amazing people in so many different facets of the music industry, from how to make viral sounds, how to get a job as a touring musician, how to run a studio, how to get sync music going, how to become a music educator. I mean, there's so many different ways of making it in the music world, and people just don't talk about them. And so this episode, though, is going to be a little bit different because unlike these other avenues that we've explored, I really wasn't on board with what our next guest preaches, which is the use of record labels to grow your music career and how to take your music to the next level. I have been fiercely independent my entire musical journey. When I was in a band, I had offers to sign to a record label, turned them down. They were really bad deals. I've seen so many musicians get screwed over in bad record deals and almost ruin their lives. If you've been in the music industry at all, you've seen this firsthand. I mean, people who put their heart and soul into an amazing project only for it to be shelved and then to be told that the reason we're going to shelve this is because the scene is not warm right now, or the sound that you're going for, it's not really what people want to hear at this moment. We might want to release this later. And it's sad, man. I've seen it. I've seen people get destroyed by bad contracts where some clause will lock them into a deal that they didn't know, but the clause is in fine print, and then they sign to a bigger label, and then original label says, not so fast, and they block the release of records that way. And then the band tried to get out of it, so they had to hire attorneys and they had to hire a legal team, and so they got out of the deal and then went back to the major label, and the major label's like, well, we're not going to promote this record because now we're out several $100,000s paying lawyer fees. We don't have any money to promote your record. And then you put the record out, it goes nowhere because you have no promotion, and you get dropped. And then the band breaks up immediately after. And this was a band that, I've seen these stories again and again and again. And so I don't tell you these stories to scare you. It's probably not the best way to preface an episode with him, but our guest today is Scott Orr. And Scott Orr is based just outside of Toronto, Canada, and Scott runs a program called Other Record Labels. And again, I was really hesitant about having this conversation because of my experience with record labels and what I've seen other people do and vice versa and things of that nature. But I started watching a lot of Scott's content on YouTube, and I found myself going, this guy's got a really interesting take on record labels and the way that they can actually survive in 2024. And it seems crazy because record labels, again, like I said, I have not had many good experiences with record labels. I don't know many artists that have had good experiences with record labels. But Scott is leading the way of what record labels can be in 2024. And not only did we go into what running a good record label is like, what people should look out for when they sign to a label. We talked a ton about that, but we also talked about how artists and labels can leverage Bandcamp and make really good money. It's so much better. The numbers for Bandcamp versus Spotify are just ridiculous, but everybody wants Spotify numbers. Everybody wants those numbers. But the numbers for a stream versus a sold album on a stream on Spotify versus a sold album on Bandcamp, it's like the margins are like 5,000% better. Like not even close, and people yet they still want everyone to go to stream it on Spotify. And then on top of that, we also talked about vinyl and how vinyl works and how to make better vinyl and the mistakes that a lot of people make on vinyl and how to avoid those. Vinyl's, again, another one where the margins are just so much better than streaming. And if you're able to tap into these revenue streams, you can 100% make a career for yourself. So this episode was fun because I think I learned a lot about what record labels are. I didn't realize the scope of what some of these newer record labels are trying to do, how they're actually helping artists. I did not realize how powerful of a tool Bandcamp is. And I think I would have, if I had printed vinyl without this conversation, I probably would have made a disastrous mistake. And so I'm really glad that I had this conversation with Scott. Scott is incredibly knowledgeable. And honestly, this is probably one of the better podcasts as far as like bang for your buck information, how to navigate a lot of the pitfalls that early musicians get into and how they get screwed into contracts, how they get into bad deals with their Bandcamp not working and vinyl. And honestly, it's just awesome to see how Scott has helped so many artists and helped so many labels figure these things out and gives them tools and platforms on how to make it. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, on the Rhynestone Podcast, welcome from other record labels, Scott Orr. Welcome to the Rhynestone Podcast, your go-to destination for unraveling the mysteries of the music industry. I'm your host, Banner Driskell, and today we're delving into the intriguing world of record labels. Our guest, Scott Orr, brings a wealth of experience to the table. As a musician, songwriter, label owner, and the driving force behind other record labels, Scott is dedicated to equipping individuals for the knowledge needed to navigate the complexities of running their own label. From insightful courses to engaging podcasts and an array of resources, Scott's platform is a valuable asset for aspiring label owners. Not content with just talking the talk, Scott walks the walk. Through his label Other Songs, he has amassed a dedicated following on Bandcamp and garnered over 40,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Scott Orr, welcome to the Rhynestone Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So, Scott, this episode is going to be a little bit different than some of the other ones I've done because I think you and I, in theory, I think you and I hold slightly opposing views, and I think your opinion, obviously, is that record labels are an essential part of the music industry in 2024. And for me, I have worked for a major label. I have had record deals offered to me that were awful. I mean, horrendous, which we can get into. And I probably know 100 musicians who've been signed to various labels, from top of the line pop lines to their neighborhood punk label. And I would say of those 100 musicians, 98 of them have had less than stellar experiences. So, Scott, my first question is, where do record labels fit into the landscape in 2024?
Well, I mean, I think what we would agree on is that they're not necessary. So I understand that. I mean, in the same way that record stores are not necessary. We don't need record stores. We can have records shipped directly from musicians to music fans. We don't need a distributor to get that record from the plant to the store to then to the store to the fan. But obviously we see a place for record stores as music fans. There's something we appreciate about record stores. And even taking it a step back further, it's like we don't need vinyl. We don't need CDs, and we don't need cassettes anymore to consume music. Yet they're at all-time highs. So certainly for vinyl sales they are, because there's a different connection. So to answer, I don't even know if you asked this question, but a lot of people ask this question, or they'll exclaim that we don't need record labels. And I 100% agree that we don't need record labels. However, not everybody out there, and actually I am not on a record label. I'm on my own record labels. So that is independent. I am independent. I am the label boss. I discovered myself. I've had, like you, I've had opportunities to work with other labels. I've looked at thought, no, it doesn't really make sense. I like to have control, so I think I'll stay independent. But not everyone is like you or I. Not everybody has a music podcast. Not everyone else has a music business. There's parts of the independent landscape that we really like and that we really get excited about. And I've worked with artists on my label, and I've met people in our record label community or on our show. I've met people who have no interest in getting involved on the business side of things. They're either intimidated by it, but more more than that, they're just not interested at all, and they don't want to get involved with it, and they want a teammate. They want somebody else to help out with that. I mean, does a band need a drummer? No, but there are drummers out there in the bands who play a very specific role, and the guitar player doesn't want to be the drummer, but the drummer does. And so I think that I see a good record label as being a team member. I see them as being another person in the band who's really passionate about stuff like distribution, manufacturing, PR and promotion and marketing. These are things that our people in our record label community and the record labels that I've met, these are things that like we're actually really passionate about. We go to bed at night thinking about unique marketing things. We go to bed at night thinking about playlist curators and how to reach them and how to find them and how to get on playlists. So that to me, I think, and one of the things I love about other record labels and the community that we've built is we have this kind of like unspoken call to action to redefine the record labels. Because a lot of us grew up understanding that record labels were problematic. Record labels from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s into the 2000s, and even still today, I'm sure, have a really bad reputation for how they treat artists. And I think the independent record label can operate on a completely different wavelength. And that's what my full-time job isn't to advocate for record labels in the music industry. I don't really need to change people's mind. My full-time job is to help people who want to start a record label and to encourage them, empower them, make their job easier, because their job, and I would say 95% of the record labels that I meet, they are starting their record label out of a place of fandom. It's pure music fandom. And I think it's the same thing for you in your business. It's that you see an artist, you hear an artist, and you think it's not fair that they're not getting on such and such playlist. It's not fair that they're making 20 records or 200 records and only selling 2 to their parents. Like you think that they should have a bigger platform. And 95 to 99 to 100% of the labels I meet and I work with, that's where they're coming from. They're saying, I'm starting a label because I don't think people appreciate prog rock enough. I don't think people appreciate new jazz enough. I don't think people appreciate Christian gospel Afro beats enough. I don't think people appreciate music from musicians from India that aren't in the Bollywood scene. So these are the real legitimate labels that I've met, and this is the place that they're coming from. Soapbox off.
No, we love the soapbox here at the Rhinestone Podcast. That was great. So what would you say are the main types of labels that are thriving today?
Do you mean like independent, like outside of the majors, I guess?
Yes. I mean, obviously it can be majors as well because there's like subsidiaries and stuff like that. But I guess the independents, who are what kind of independent labels are thriving today?
I think an independent label that is thriving is an independent label that has got down very narrow in their niche. And they've really identified that group of people who like a certain thing, who appreciate other similar brands, wear certain clothes, drink certain coffee, like certain beverages, eat certain foods, watch certain movies. There is a very, very specific group of people that is your audience. And I encourage every record label I meet, you've got to figure out what this niche is. And like I mentioned, there's a British record label called Gospel Hydration, and they found their audience of people who love gospel and Christian hip hop and, Afro beats and stuff that you just wouldn't normally associate with gospel music. And they found that and they approach a young audience, and their audience are very similar people. If you see them at a show, they're kind of wearing the same clothes and they're of the same age. And so to me, you found this like certain group of people, and chances are they like similar artists. Chances are they like certain other brands. And so I think it's really important that a label says, okay, we are a label that, first of all, loves experimental music, ambient experimental music. We are a label that loves cassettes, and we're going to release exclusively on cassette. We're also a label that focuses primarily on graphic design and creating really great looking products. And we're only going to make 50 of these cassettes. And our audience loves those three things equally in that cross section of those three things. And those tapes are going to sell out overnight, no doubt. And there are labels that operate like that. If a label comes on the scene and says, I want to be the next Sony, I want to be the next Universal, that doesn't make any sense. That's like you opening a brick and mortar store downtown and saying, I want to be the next Walmart. If you say, no, I want to be a gift shop for this type of person selling these type of products, then you'll be more successful than saying, hey, we're the next Walmart, right? So that, to me, I think the best labels, the labels I get so excited about, are labels that are serving a really, really small niche group.
So if someone were to start a label, should they plan so like, for example, you talked about niching down. So we'll use your ambient label as an example, right? So you said that the first thing is they make ambient music, they cassettes only, and high impact graphic design. Should a label plan for that before they start?
100%.
So in that same vein, how so obviously you can find those niches in the music industry. How do you, or I guess not the music industry, but the music listening community, the active listeners? How does a label find an audience? Like, I mean, that seems like such a, obviously I understand what you're talking about building the avatar and wearing the same brands and stuff like that. But I mean, it's very difficult to cut through the noise and find those kind of people and find the true signals, those true fans. How does a label go and find those kind of things?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, the scary answer to that these days is the algorithm. The algorithm on Instagram, on your For You page, or even on Spotify, will actually do a pretty good job at eventually showing you those things. Even YouTube will say, if you subscribe to a graphic designer how-to thing, if you subscribe to this cassette label and you subscribe to these artists, we kind of know a little bit about you. You also shopped at Nike and you buy like these high-end shoes and blah blah blah. So like they start to, I think the algorithm has gotten good at showing me things. I've seen on Instagram, I follow like cool great graphic designers and apparel companies, and I also follow like unique equipment, like music equipment, so like hi-fi stereos, or like unique I've been getting these ads for this like speaker system that's transparent. I think the company's called Transparent, and they make turntables and speaker systems that are all encased in glass or plastic. It's the whole thing is transparent, and I'm beside myself. I have to buy one. It's so beautiful, but like for some reason that got fed to me, and I think it's because I follow gear companies and recording studios but also designers. And so they probably know, oh yeah, you're going to like this. And they're right. So I do think that there is a certain cream rising to the top. It's not something that you can rely on. But I think when you make quality products for your community will find you, whether that's word of mouth. I mean, there's you can go to the affinity groups on Facebook and on Reddit, and spam there and say, here's a new release. The reality is that a lot of these niches that we're talking about, they actually have subgenres. They have those subgenres have names attached to them that you or I have never heard of, but people in that space are really obsessed with, like goth video game music from Japan. I mean, that's like those, if you're catering to that space, you probably know where those people are hanging out online, hopefully.
And yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. And actually that's one of the things I tell artists when we work with them is to like go find subreddits that will work to your music and post there and see how it does. And it's amazing. I've seen people have songs that have just blown up on Spotify because of they found the right niche, they made the right post, they made the right content, and it killed on Reddit. And then they tried Instagram ads as well, and it wasn't as effective. because they found the right target audience. So I think even if you're not running a record label, thinking like that is a good frame of reference for figuring out who your audience is. And you need to figure out not the audience that likes you, but the audience that loves you.
That's right. And really this would be true too for independent artists. So it's not just record labels who have a genre or a subgenre or a niche, but it's also true for artists. Like, what is your niche? I mean, for me to call myself a singer-songwriter or a pop singer-songwriter or even a folk singer-songwriter, that's not narrow enough. I need to go narrower if I want to find my people. And one of the ways you can do that is you can look at who would you compare yourself as an artist? So if I make a certain kind of music, who are my peers that are maybe a little bit more pop or certainly more popular than me? Where are they? So then go to Spotify, see what playlist they're on. And Spotify has a lot of like really nuanced micro niche playlists that they curate. But then of course there's a lot of user generated playlists as well. And so what are those playlists called? How do they refer to that? Is this meditation music? Is most of what you create actually called meditation music? Is it jazz or is it contemporary jazz? Is it jazz or is it free jazz or whatever? So to me, it's like, even if you're an independent artist, you should know what your micro genre is. Because if you're an independent artist and you're going to We Are the Music Makers on Reddit and posting, you're probably going to get kicked off. If you go to the pop channel and you're posting about yourself, you're probably going to get kicked off or you're going to be buried. But it might be a little bit better if you go to, lo-fi electronic pop from Chicago. If there's a subreddit for that, then you might do a little bit better.
Obviously, having a record label in 2024 seems like a kiss of death financially. Like, it could seem like something where a lot of people, I mean, artists aren't making money a lot of times. And it seems like the idea then would be that labels are not making money. So my question to you is, how do small record labels, especially these niche ones that we're talking about, how do they make money? What are the best revenue streams for them?
Well, the biggest thing is multiple revenue streams. I think there are very few labels. There are some, but there are very few labels that have one revenue stream. There are some labels, I would say the majority of labels have a preferred revenue stream or a primary revenue stream. And so some labels, they do really well with vinyl. They do really well with physical product. They have a distributor. They have great relationships with their local record store. They have maybe a fan base who is committed to anywhere between 20 to 50 records on pre-order. So if you're pressing 300 records and you're getting them for $8, $7 each, and you're selling them for $25, and your fan base is committed to 40 or 50 of them, the artist can sell 40 or 50 of them on tour or to their fan base, and you have a distributor who's committed to 100 of them, and then you have some local record stores that champion you. So there are labels out there who have a really good model for vinyl and cassettes in the same way, less so with distribution in record stores, but who have like an online community for their cassettes. In those cases, streaming might just contribute a small piece to the pie. Sync licensing might contribute a small piece of the pie. And then there's labels in our community who are absolutely killing it on sync licensing. They come from a sync background, and they have relationships with sync agents and music supervisors. They have channels, direct channels. They record their music in the studio with a TV show in mind, or with a type of sync in mind. And this is a record label. And then when that song does well on streaming, when that song does well on a sync, they also pick up some of the streaming revenue because people will watch it on TV, they'll Shazam it, and they'll go find it, or it gets placed on a playlist for that TV show. And so they get some streaming money, but the majority comes from sync. So there are a lot of labels where they just find their path, and maybe that's physical, maybe it's sync. We have a lot of relaxation, meditation, neoclassical labels in our community that are just killing it on Spotify and are on incredible playlists, and they make tons of money monthly from Spotify. And in the same community, there's people who get absolutely $0 and now officially are getting $0 from Spotify. And so it's there, but I will say those are unique examples. A great label should be working on all of those channels, plus channels revenue streams I haven't mentioned, plus a revenue stream that I or you have never thought of before. That to me is a really exciting record label.
So we talked about streaming, we talked about physical media, and we talked about sync licensing. Are there any others as well? So like maybe publishing, or what are these other ones? You said there was a couple other ones. Let's dive into those.
Okay. Publishing, I don't really think that my personal belief is I don't think record labels should get involved with publishing. I think that should be left with a publisher or publishing admin. It's a very complicated process. It requires a know-how, it requires connections with other countries, and I just think to be done well, it requires special contracts with your artists. So to run a record label and a publishing company at the same time, I would question that if you're an individual person. So publishing, I don't think record labels get too much involved with, but some people do. I would say, let's see, what else do we have? I guess there's the merch side of things. There are record labels that have started to see when a record label has music fans coming to their social media for their releases and coming to their website to buy their releases. Some record labels will start to carry other people's titles and start to move in the direction of like an online record store. Some record labels, when you start to have customers of a certain kind, then maybe you're also selling hardware. There's a record label in Calgary that has developed a plugin. So they're selling a music plugin, plus they sell records. And I mean, it's like there are no rules. It's like if you were to start a record label, would you think about also starting a music plugin, like creating a music plugin? And of course not. Like or a piece of hardware for studio or microphone? No, but that's incredible that like somebody would go out there and do that and understand that there are no rules. That you could open a record store. We have record labels in our community in New York who have a record store. So it started as a record label and then they opened up a traditional brick and mortar record store. Label services too. Some labels will offer some of the services that you're offering to independent artists that aren't officially signed to their label. There is a record label that just opened up a pressing plant in Pittsburgh. There's another record label in Oklahoma that started a distribution company. So they're taking care of digital distribution. These are creative record labels that are saying, we're not making enough from streaming. We're not making enough from physical sales. We're not making enough from sync, or maybe we just don't have the contacts to do those things. And so what's another way that we can be creative? Or maybe we're doing okay with streaming. We're doing okay with vinyl. We're doing okay with sync. We're doing okay with live shows. We're doing okay with merch. Maybe there's something else that we could do that nobody else is doing, like opening a pressing plant or opening a record store.
Yeah, those are all really unique examples. I didn't know record labels were doing things like that.
So do you hate them less now?
Maybe you might be changing my opinion a little bit. So I mean, I guess my question though is, what's the difference between like artist management and a label? Because a lot of what's happening now in the music industry, and you know, I'll preface this by saying I did work at a major label for a little bit, and I worked on the content creation teams for a label. We worked with a world-renowned label or artist who I can tell you off camera who it is, and I worked with several artists. I mean, top 5 Billboard chart type artists, right? And so one of the things I learned about the music industry is that a lot of times what people consider like industry plants, for example, are people who've been training since they were 12 years old to become a pop star. Like they found they could sing really well at 12, and then all of a sudden they find a manager, and that manager puts them in dance lessons, singing lessons, performance lessons, that type of, those stage play, fashion. They have stylists, and then when they reach a certain age, it's getting younger and younger, but when they reach a certain age, a label will pick them up because they've been developed for a certain amount of time. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is, um, even at the independent label, I saw bands who they had management that guided all these things. They would guide, like, how many records do we print, where we go on tour. And my question is, what's the difference between artist management and a record label?
Well, I think with some of the managers that I've seen, and the smaller labels that I've seen, there really isn't a difference. There would be, some of the responsibilities would be similar, and they might take the same cut or they might take less from an artist. I think what they have in common is that it's an artist who wants a partner. It's an artist who wants someone to speak on their behalf. I mean, there's probably artists who are listening to this who can attest, and I've done it, I will admit to it, where I've created a fake email to pitch my music on my own behalf, because selling yourself is uncomfortable. And so there's a lot of artists that like someone to come behind them to give them legitimacy, if anything, perceived legitimacy. And if not perceived legitimacy, or in addition to perceived legitimacy or actual legitimacy, just validation, just encouragement that there's another person who's not in the band who believes in us. So if that's a manager or that's an indie record label, I think they're almost one and the same. And if an artist is doing well enough that they can have both, that an artist can advocate with the record label on behalf of, or sorry, a manager could advocate on behalf of the artist with the record label, then even better. And but yeah, I would say it's hard. I mean, we're not really comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges when we talk about major labels and we talk about indie labels. I think the indie labels that I have met have stopped following the major label, or are working towards stopping following the major label model. This is not diet major labels. Indie labels are not like the cheap version, the junior version of a major label. In my opinion, there's something brand new being created. It's a community, it's a partnership. It is the deals are even. The deals are not in perpetuity like the major labels are. They're often deals that without contracts, deals that you can walk away from at any time. To me, they're closer to a marriage, to a lifelong friendship. That is the record label that I'm seeing, and we don't really talk about major labels. We don't really model what we do off of major labels, or certainly the labels in our community don't.
I think that's great, because the major label game, as having somewhat of an insider perspective on it, it's so complicated, and it's so there's so many facets, and they have tools at their disposal that, like, the modern mortal musician just doesn't have anything close to access to. And so when I hear that, I think that when you're talking about redefining what it takes to be a label, or I guess what a label is, even, I think that is a much more, I guess I would say, that's a much, that makes me feel better on the inside, that there is, like, you're redefining what a record label is. Because I think a lot of people, they've seen they've seen all the music biopic pics of the Doors movie where the manager screws over the Doors and stuff like that. Everyone's seen that. Everyone knows that trope, and it's also, unfortunately, it's very true. I've seen it where people have gotten screwed over and their labels have messed them up. And so I guess my next question is, as an artist, right? You are a musician and you are a label owner. Now, I know your label now is mostly geared towards your own music, other songs. But as an artist, what can an artist do to look more attractive to a record label, especially like a good one that's like, that's maybe not taking the normal path. Maybe they have a pressing plant, or they have, software, plugins or whatever. What can an artist do to find these good quality labels?
Well, I I would say that when a record label is looking for an artist, or an artist is looking for a record label, and they meet, to me, I would be really turned off with someone who has no idea where they are in their career currently and where they want to go and what they want to do. To me, this is going to work if the artist is working just as hard on their career as the record label is working on their career. Like when it's a double partnership. And so I think when an artist knows, we're making an album, I'd like this album to come out in a year and a half from now. If they have a realistic idea of um, timelines and how the industry works, to me, that becomes more attractive to a record label, as opposed to, I don't think there are very many record labels. See, this is where it differs from the majors. I don't think there are very many record labels that would want to work with a child who has no idea what they're doing, someone completely ignorant and naive. That sounds exhausting. What sounds fun is collaborating with someone who's as serious about their music and their career as I am about my label, as I am about my music and my career. So I would say, you know, when you're submitting to a record label, tell the record label what you want very specifically, what you need for your career. Don't say exposure. That's stupid. Don't say, I need money. I need to get rich. I like, you have to be very specific. And I sure hope that you're pitching to a record label that you've seen do for other artists what you expect or what you hope to do, and that there are labels you're pitching to, relevant record labels. So yeah, I mean, I don't really think too much on that side of things. But I did a video a long time ago about things that record label hate. And I don't remember now because it was about 2 years ago that I made it. But it's really nice when I get a pitch, and I don't get them anymore because, like you said, my label's focused on well, I mean, the label's kind of like cryogenically frozen right now. But my own music is the only thing that it's releasing. So I don't get submissions anymore. But you would get these submissions that would come in weekly, sometimes daily. Most of them would be like, yo, check out this. And it's a link to YouTube. And it's just like, that speaks volumes as to like what you expect me, your professionalism, like forget it. And as opposed to, sometimes somebody will send me this long email saying, I've worked on this record, I've paid for it. We're not releasing it yet. I worked with this producer. I listened to some of your music and I think it's in line with blah, blah, blah. Just very coherent, very professional. Here's a link to the album. And here's what I'm looking for out of a label. I need a label to help me with vinyl manufacturing and vinyl distribution. And I'd love to chat with you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, okay, that's great. That's a great starting point. Now you might click on the link. The music sucks. End of conversation. Or you click on the link and it's like, the music's really great. And this person seems really professional and put together. This is exciting.
So on the flip side of this, a lot of labels are known for screwing artists over. What can an artist do to make sure that their label doesn't do that?
Well, I don't know many labels today that screw people over. I don't really associate with many of them. I don't have many case studies. I know historically that's been the case, but what I kind of tell labels is, and I will say there have been some labels that screw people over, but generally it's not intentional, and people didn't start out that way to screw someone over. It was just someone very disorganized. But anyway, I would say that for an artist is, you have to know what you want, and you have to outline your expectations. This is the number one thing I tell labels when they meet with an artist. When you meet with someone, you're meeting with them because you love their music. So you heard their music and you love their music. And so when you meet with them, to me, it's like, as a record label, I would ask the artist, what are your expectations? And if an artist said to me, all I really want is to hear my music on a Netflix show, then I would say, okay, I know where to pitch for that, but it's very unlikely. And I don't have any contacts. I don't have any music supervisor contacts. My expertise is in a different space. I do have some streaming contacts. I'm a little bit better in the playlist world. I have some vinyl contacts. I know how to make great records. And they're like, no, it's all about sync for me. So to me, that you should not enter a relationship with that artist, a business relationship, if you've heard their expectations and you can't fulfill them. And so I would, if I was an artist, I would do the exact same thing at the coffee shop. I would say, what do you expect from me as an artist? Like, what do you get out of this deal? What do you want from this deal? And find out what their expectations are, and just make sure everyone's on the same page. And then what you can do on your second date is when you have a deal memo and you actually write down these expectations into an agreement form on a napkin if you want. This is not a legal document. It's just saying, I want an advance of $1,000 because it will help me finish my record. I want my record to be on vinyl, and I want my label to work on this record, promoting this record for 6 months so that we can sell as many copies as possible. And I only want to work with this record label for 1 year from the release date. I won't work with any other record label for this entire year. I won't release anything else for an entire year. And I want 50% of the net profits. So you get these deal points, and if they agree to it, if everyone's expectations are in alignment, then you can sign a contract and go from there. But to me, and I'd say this more to labels because that's who I work with, it's like, go to this coffee shop, have multiple chats, unofficial chats. You can record them on your phone if you want, so people remember what the expectations were. But like, make notes about like, what does everybody think they're going to get from this relationship? And if there is something that you feel like you can't meet those expectations on either side, then you shouldn't get together. You shouldn't work together.
I think that is a really good point. And I think that you need to be in alignment. And anybody you hire on your team, whether that's management, whether that's, tour managers, they need to be in alignment with your goals and beliefs and what you want to do. And I see a lot of artists who don't have any desire to be in the business side of things. And when I see those kind of artists, they're almost guaranteed to not have any modicum of success. And so I couldn't agree more. If you are not able to take care of the business end of your music career, you're going to fail every time. And it's why the artists who are at the top of the game, they have these managers, they have their business contacts, they have all the people there who help them to make the right decisions, to give them the best information. And so if you're not aligned with your team, you are almost destined to fail, in my opinion. So now, how does one market a record label? Because we've talked about finding artists, we've talked about starting. Obviously, a label at its core is a brand, and obviously the focal point is going to be the artists. That's going to be the focal point of getting the stuff out, because you need to sell the artist in order to sell the physical media, whatever it is. But as far as marketing a record label, how important is that, and what are steps that record labels can take to ensure that their brand is also reaching out and connecting with a new audience?
Well, I think it's really important, and I think about this a lot. Unfortunately, it does have to oftentimes it takes a backseat to the artists, as it should, and to the artist releases. But the way I think you market, we've already talked about the niche. I think that is the number one thing, is having a niche. And yeah, having that ahead of time before you start your record label is ideal, but it's not a deal breaker. I mean, I do think there is a possibility that you get started as a record label and a niche emerges. That you do the things that you love, you work with the artists, only the artists that you really truly enjoy and love their music. And then maybe you start to see some common denominators and a niche or a micro niche or a subgenre appears. That's what happened to me. I realized I was just working, I was doing my own music. I started, I had some free time, so I was recording my friend's band. And then they brought in one of their friends to record. And I said, we should start a record label. There's 3 of us here. We could share resources and everything. And then I realized, hey, you know what? There's like a kind of a Canadiana folk sound that's emerging from this. That's kind of cool. And so we didn't really start with a niche, it just formed. And I think what happens is if you stay consistent, a lot of labels don't like doing this. A lot of labels don't like sticking to one genre. They want to open themselves up to other opportunities, or maybe as a music fan, they like lots of genres. But I think if you stay consistent, that's a form of marketing. If you are consistent in this type of music that you do, the type of artists that you, even their personalities or their aesthetic, that you release on your roster, all of a sudden this brand starts to form. It's kind of hard to do on day one because all you have is your first release and your logo. So it's kind of hard to say, we are a brand like XYZ or like such and such. You can't really establish that immediately. But by being consistent over time, then that becomes a form of marketing, because what happens is you'd release these quality releases and there's some sort of common thread, whether it's like a very obvious subgenre, or maybe it's a type of recording, all analog instruments and analog mixing and analog mastering, and you can feel it, you can hear it in the music. Whatever it is, that there's this common thread. Over time, your fans start to go, oh, this doesn't surprise me that this record is from such and such label, because it sounds like it should be from such and such label. And we all have labels like that, that we kind of go to, that's like, I bet you any money this is from such and such, and sure enough it is. And the same thing in graphic design. I'm passionate about design, as I mentioned, and so when a record label like Blue Note has a consistency in their graphic design, I love that. Or even a step further, where all the album covers look the same minus a few changes, or an Obi strip on every record that is uniformed. I love that. I think that's really cool. As a music fan, I love that. As a record label, I love that too. But as a music fan, to have like collect all 5 of, from this label, I think that looks really cool. So I think when you're consistent, I mean, when it comes to going out and marketing the label, paying for ads, that kind of stuff, that's a little bit harder to do. That time and money is better spent on the individual releases. But just being consistent as a label with your releases is kind of enough, I think.
I love that. I think, the thing that popped in my head when you were talking about that is like early sub pop, because I'm originally from Seattle, and so early sub pop before Nirvana, and now sub pop is all sorts of stuff. They've got hip hop and alternative hip hop, but in the late '80s, sub pop would put out compilations, and these compilations, they just had these loud guitar bands that weren't really punk and weren't really metal, but were kind of like in between the two. And you just knew that these artists from all over America, that you just knew it was like a sub pop sound. And then obviously that sound, catapulted in the stratosphere with Nirvana. But yeah, I think they didn't, they weren't trying to put out a grunge record and then put out, a Public Enemy record or something. They stuck consistent. And I think that's 100% like that tracks, not only now, but through the history of the recording industry.
Well, and Sub Pop's now got to a place where the logo is synonymous. And so you can say, you can do hip hop, you can do folk, you can do all sorts of things, because they've kind of transcended that, which is a great place to be. And it's similar to Columbia Records, they've gotten to a place where they can do whatever they want.
And that's also an example too, where they do have like a really solid brand, and they have a team, they have a warehouse. I've been to their warehouse in Seattle. It's a business, and they do have a bit more artistic cred than, some major labels, but they it is like they push their artists to do press and content and stuff, just almost like a major label. It's just on a slightly lower level of the game, and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and they have like a airport store, right? They have and I mean also they really embrace the city, which is another thing part that could be part of your niche. When record labels say, "Hey, you know what? We're from this country that is underappreciated, or we're from this city and we want to help define this city or let this city define us." That's part of your niche.
Yeah, 100%. I had friends who were signed to Sub Pop, and it was very much like, oh, Seattle is the hub of it. And then even when they weren't, and they started signing other ones, they made a subsidiary called Hardly Art. I think it's Hardly Art, which was like all Seattle bands. All, I mean, it was really cool. We had people I played shows with, were signed to them and stuff, and theirs were.
Yeah, when we started the podcast, both of those labels were in our first year. We had Hardly Art in our first couple of episodes, and we had Sub Pop
That's
about a
awesome.
year later.
Yeah, I mean the Sub Pop guys they're really cool. I love them. Bruce Pavitt, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Jonathan something. I can't remember their name.
We had Carly Starr, who is the marketing director. She was
Okay.
our guest on the show.
Okay, that's awesome. Hey, everybody, I wanted to take a quick break from our conversation with Scott, and I wanted to ask you guys something really important, which is if you have enjoyed this podcast, or you're learning something, or you are gaining info, knowledge, you're taking notes, if this podcast helps you in any way, please consider subscribing, hitting the notification bell, and liking this podcast. I cannot tell you how important it is to have those numbers up. My goal here at Rhinestone is to help people, is to help artists get the knowledge and information and break those walls down so that the gatekeepers don't own all the info, so that you have info that you can actually apply to your own life and make a career in music. Whenever you're able to help us get those numbers up in likes, in views, and subscribers and stuff like that, when I go to pitch to artists, when I go to pitch to people in the music industry, and they see, oh, you have this amount of followers, you've got this amount of likes, you've got this amount of views, it's so much easier to get people on. So if I've in any way helped you in any way, please consider hitting that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get back to our podcast with Scott Orr from Other Record Labels. Obviously, vinyl and cassettes have had a bit of a resurgence in the last decade, which is awesome. I'm a vinyl snob just like everybody else is. I see you've got, looks like a Phil Collins vinyl behind you is somewhere. Yeah. How can a label hop into that market without spending a ton of money up front? Because vinyl can be very pricey as an upfront cost because you are paying for the manufacturer, and you might not have even sold a single one or, sold any of them. And it can be thousands of dollars very quickly if you're not careful. Are there ways or maybe not even ways, but like a method for a label to dip their toes into that without feeling overwhelmed with trying to ship 200 of them?
Well, yes and no. I guess you could say that you could start with cassettes first, because you can do a run of 10 cassettes for it, at that price. It's maybe almost $8-9 each. So you could do, if you want to dip your toes in physical media, but I don't think cassettes are a good indicator whether your fans are interested in vinyl. So to me, it's like, I love both. I collect both, but I don't think I'm the normal type of music collector out there. So on one hand, I know a lot of labels who start with CDs, move on to cassettes, or vice versa, and then eventually, okay, we're selling enough of these, I think we could try out vinyl. And then either they didn't like it, or they then stop doing CDs and cassettes and they move on to all vinyl. I guess on the other side of the coin, you could also do lathe cuts, where you could do a short run of 10 records. They're going to cost you $20 or $30 each, and you have to sell them then hand numbered for $40 to make your money back, or give them just to the bands and their band's parents or something. You could dip your toes that way a little bit. I also know one of our partners, Precision Pressing in Canada, a great pressing plant here that I've worked with, they're getting into much shorter runs. They're doing drop shipping, I believe, is something that they're looking at doing too, where they're, instead of shipping 100 records to the band and then the band selling it and then having to ship it again to the artist, that they can just wait and ship it directly from the plant to the music fan. And so I know that they're doing like a cheaper model that's a little bit more of an introductory. So there are like ways to kind of dip your toes, but I would say the best way to dip your toes is to pick a release you're really excited about. Maybe it's a compilation, although vinyl compilations are a little tricky, but maybe. But just, I would say pick an artist you really believe in who's made a great record and press that. Make 200 copies, make 300 copies. It's going to cost you about $2,000. But that's a way to dip your toes. Do it, and you're going to learn a lot. That's a university degree on pressing vinyl, is if you press vinyl. And you're going to realize, okay, we've got 80% of these in my garage. We should have sold them for cheaper. We should have went for color instead of all black. Maybe we shouldn't have done these inserts. That was stupid. Maybe we didn't need download cards. People don't use those anymore. You learn all these things. So yeah, there's like a couple ways you could dip your toes, but I would say just go for it. Give it a try. And I did it with my own record, my own label in 2013. And I learned a lot, and it sucked. And I didn't sell nearly as many as I thought. I made so many mistakes, but I've pressed vinyl, dozens of times since then, and I love it.
What were some of your early mistakes in pressing vinyl?
I underestimated how long it would take. I thought you could send them the files and you would get the records in a couple of weeks. And this was in 2013, back when that wasn't crazy. It still took August, September, October. It still took 3 months, which in COVID, after COVID, vinyl manufacturing was taking over 12 months. It's now down to it's really good because there's a lot more plants and there's a lot more capacity. So I think you could be anywhere between 3 to 6 months, maybe 4 months. So I underestimated how long it would take. And so I didn't have my records on release day, and I had a big release show. And I wanted to sell vinyl. And so what I had a test pressing, and I was like, this is sort of what it will look like. Do you want to give me $25 now? And then I'll mail you a record, or I'll drop it off at your house. It sucked. And then I went on a little tour, and the records still weren't in hand. So, it was a disaster. And I wish I had known the lead time. So the first thing you do when you talk to a pressing plant is like, what's the lead time? And the lead time will be a certain amount of time from when you get them, the deposit, the audio files, and the artwork. And 80% of the mistakes that happen in a pressing project happen on the artwork. So assuming your artwork has been approved, your audio files are submitted, and even those have been approved, and you've submitted your deposit, which is usually 50%, that's when the clock starts ticking. And so that's, if your pressing plant says 4 months approximately, then it starts when you've got all of that stuff to them. So you really want to make sure, if you're like me and you have a tour and a release day coming up, you work back from there. So say 4 months, give yourself 6 months, at least 6 months, maybe 6 to 8 from when your release day is going to be, from when you start manufacturing. So that was a big issue. I did a kind of an unexciting package. Vinyl was a novel thing still for people in 2013. So just the idea that an artist had artwork with a black vinyl, black and white label, that doesn't sell as well today than color does. I mean, color is, unfortunately, it's kind of mandatory.
Really?
I hear that from a lot of labels, and I kind of agree. And I even as a music fan, I see a black option and I'm like, okay, it's about the experience, right? It's about getting this cool package. It's not, I tell people vinyl is a nice to have. It's not a need to have. We don't need it to consume music. So it has to be a really fun experience.
So, are there any other like hacks? I don't want to say hacks, but like things that people should look out. So, obviously, you said lead time's another one. You said color is almost mandatory now. That was your exact words. You said I know I love it. I'm here for it. I have a one of my favorite vinyl purchases I ever made was what's the famous New Order album? Truth, Lies, and Corruption. I can't remember, but it's in this like crystal blue, off white blue. And it looks so cool on a turntable. It looks
Yeah.
awesome. So I 100% agree about that.
I bought an artist record on vinyl off of Amazon. Don't
Ooh,
cut that
ooh.
part out. But I got the black version, and I didn't know that it came in a different color. And then I went to their Instagram, and like the indie record store version or the version you buy from them came in like a cool, like, a canary color. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, I didn't know that. I was just trying to save some money and get it overnight. But yeah, no, I think some other. So sorry, what's your question? Like other like lessons or other ways to make cool?
Well, yeah, I guess let's go with make cool records. I think one of the other things you mentioned too was like download cards are no longer in vogue. Is there anything else like to help? The thing is, I want obviously like you had that experience with the lead time and going on tour without records and
Yeah.
stuff. I think someone who listens to this podcast and is considering pressing vinyl, I would love for them to know like what are the things that they can do to ensure that they have a better chance of selling their product.
You can't just assume that people want, and you say you're a vinyl head, so like you know this to be true. You can't just assume that people want your music on vinyl as if that's the only way they can listen to your music. And so when you make a black record with just a boring label, and you take your digital album cover and you blow it up so that it's 12 by 12 inches, and that's it, like no inserts, nothing, and you hope to sell them, well, you're really only going to sell it to the people who are like die hard for your music and are also die hard vinyl collectors. But die hard vinyl collectors also don't want like ugly records in their collection. Like some people are quite curated about their collection. So I think the most important thing is if you're going to do vinyl, do it right. And I mean, yeah, you can go through these quote generators and you can make 200 copies for $1,800 or whatever. And at the bare minimum, or it's maybe $2,500 to add color, to add splatter, to add a cool insert, but to me, it's like that extra is worth it, so that what you want is you want someone to see the digital mock-up because it's being pressed and you're selling pre-orders. They go to your Bandcamp or Instagram and they see the digital mock-up and they go, I have to have that. I need that. Like that looks so cool. And people say that about great records. You've said that. I've said that about bands. It's like, I need that. You don't want someone to be like, oh, cool, they're releasing it on vinyl. Because if someone thinks that when they see it on Bandcamp, they're not going to buy it. Especially if they're from Japan and the checkout process, the shipping is $30, the record's $25. They're going to be like, forget it. It's not worth it. But if the record looks really cool, it has great artwork, it wasn't designed by you, it was designed by someone who's smart and makes great decisions. If the record color complements, not matches identically, but complements the album cover, the labels are cool. If there is some sort of insert, maybe it's a poster, maybe you use reverse board so it feels like soft and textured on the cover, or embossing or a die cut. You spend a bit of money and make it cool. Maybe there's something that you can do that's free where you do the inserts at home. Like you make 100 handwritten lyrics and put them in. You hand number them and sign it. People really think that's cool. You get test pressings with most times when you do a pressing, and you get 5 to 10, however many you want, but usually it's 5. And those test pressings, like, don't just throw those in the garbage. Give them to the band members, or autograph one and sell it for like $50 to your diehard fans. I sold a test pressing for my latest record, or 2 records ago, I think. I sold it for $100, and I sold it on Bandcamp, 1 copy for $100, and it was I shipped it 6 months before the album came out. So nobody knew what the album sounded like. They didn't know the album cover, the album title, the track listing. One person in the world got the album 6 months before everyone else, and it sold out in less than a minute. I posted it and it was gone because it's interesting, right? It's somebody who's like, I have to have that. And that test pressing was free. Like, it just came with you sort of pay for it, but it's part of the pressing package. Most people throw them out. So it's like, there's a lot of creative things you can do with vinyl. Just understand that it's a nice to have, it's a luxury item. And so make it a luxury item.
This is awesome. I'm loving this. This is such good info that I think a lot of people are going to really resonate with. So I want to switch paths with you a little bit. And one of the things I was really fascinated to find out about you and about other record labels and other songs is the incredible following you have on Bandcamp. I mean, you go through every one of your Bandcamp releases and you have all these pictures of people who support you. You've got editorials, you've got all sorts of stuff. And Bandcamp for a lot of musicians it's a second or third place to put your music. And usually people don't promote it. They don't promote it right. And it's also very hard for a lot of artists to build a connection there and find the fans that do shop at Bandcamp, because there's a very specific person that shops for music on Bandcamp. So how have you been able to build a following and connect with that audience that shops on Bandcamp?
I appreciate that. I don't think I have a good following. I mean, I love them. I'm grateful, but I mean, I compare it to some of the labels that I know, and I'm jealous of their following. And, there's labels out there that will release an album at 11 p.m. the night before it comes out on digital, and they'll sell out all their physical copies before midnight. And so there are great labels out there. And Bandcamp has always been a very special tool. They've always operated in a way that's completely different from other, if we call it social media in a way. It's, of course, it's a platform, it's a retail platform, but it has some social components to it, similar to YouTube or whatnot. But it's always operated differently. It's clean, it's simple, it's not like feature creeped with like a bunch of annoying stuff. It's kind of been a little bit for music snobs, but not. It's also accessible to everyone. Now, I will say they've changed hands. They are evolving. Luckily for us, from the way it looks, from the front end, I know it's different on the back end, but it's remained pretty much the same over the past 20 years or so. But by the time this comes out, or in a year from now, things might have changed. But I think, honestly, we embraced Bandcamp from day one. I think our first release went up there in 2009, and I believe the app started in 2008 or 2009. So I've had an account from day one. I've been friends with the people who work there. I just think we were just lucky. We were just like at the right place at the right time, and we've been consistent. And I think any artist and any record label needs to measure their success over a long time period. And so, we've had maybe a half dozen Bandcamp features on editorial, some really big, some just pretty small, but that's over the course of 15 years. So is that successful? I don't know. That's one every 2 years. That doesn't sound that great. You know what I mean? So it's really just over a long, long time period. I really like Bandcamp, and I think there are a lot of music fans that really do. If there's something that goes wrong with it, for whatever reason, it'll be a devastating loss to the music community. And I hope that something quickly comes along to replace it, because when we talk about streaming on the podcast and in our community, talk about the difference between passive listeners and active listeners, passive music fans and active music fans. And I don't discredit or disparage the passive music fans. Those are people who listen to chill study playlists, coffee shop playlists, or road trip playlists, and they hear my music or your music and not know who the band is, but they still give us money. They still pay the rent. Those are our passive fans. And I don't disparage them. And without them, I wouldn't be here. But then Bandcamp provides us these active fans. It's those faces you see on each release. And they're people who message us and buy a digital single in this day and age. Why? Why are you buying a digital album? Why are you buying one song for $1? That's absurd to me. But to them, they do it. It's meaningful. And I'm grateful that they do. So it's a great group of fans. I don't know. Do I have advice for you? I don't. Sorry.
Well, are there ways that artists could better utilize Bandcamp that you see, or labels?
Yeah.
I mean, I
wrote an article on it, othersongs.com/Bandcamp, little plug there. I've answered a lot of these questions before in episodes because they're questions I hear a lot. And I mean, give yourself lead time. The Bandcamp editorial team, I don't know where they're at today or who's running it, but they usually like to be submitted albums 4 months in advance, 3 to 4 months in advance. That's mind blowing for independent artists. I mean, how many of us get a mix back, get it mastered using Lander, upload it to DistroKid, and then tell our friends later that day that we have a new album out? You know, that's not a great way to run a business. Sometimes it looks like our favorite artists are just dropping records out of nowhere, but there's a lot of people and effort and work that's gone into it. And so I know Bandcamp editorial, they don't really care about singles. It's EPs and albums and compilations. And if you want to submit to them, you have to send it to them, pitch it to them like 3 to 4 months ahead. So lead time is very important. And also understand that when you're submitting an album, when you're creating an album on the platform, there's these little boxes that you can fill in. And artists like to be coy. They like to appear cool. And so they don't upload their lyrics. They don't upload the producer credits or the musician credits. They don't write a little story about the album. They don't upload an extra photo or a video. They just post the album and think that, oh, the music will speak for itself. But Bandcamp actually really likes it when you fill in all of those forms that they provide you. If you're selling a record or a tape, don't just upload the digital album cover of the record that we can see on Spotify. Show me what that vinyl looks like. Show me with the music fan holding it up in their hand and showing the cool green record. You know what I mean? Like, show that. Or at the very least, use a Photoshop mock-up and show what that looks like. So like when you click on a release and it has a digital album, it has a cassette version and a deluxe vinyl and a regular vinyl, and it's like all of this stuff. And then there's a write-up about the album. And then there's bonus tracks that aren't available on Spotify that are on the album. And then there's like all the credits. So I can see like some of my favorite musicians worked on this record. All of a sudden you're gonna have way more success than just like uploading the MP3s or WAV files or whatever, you know?
Who are some specific people who are killing the Bandcamp game in your opinion?
Oh, I'm on the spot now. I mean, my favorite label, and this is, I'm just biased. Well, I'm not biased, but this is my favorite label, but I really like these kind of like cooler design labels. Like Geographic North is a cassette label that is killing it in my opinion. And I've had them on the show and I'm just a really big fan of them. And there's a Canadian label called Seance Center as well, and they do really cool stuff on Bandcamp. So many people in our community, the labels, and I'll kick myself for not thinking of them later, but I mean, Bandcamp does a really good job at showing you labels that are doing it well. You will know that a label that's doing it well when you go to their Bandcamp page and it looks really cool. And one of the things I love about, earlier we talked about marketing a record label. One of the things I really love about Bandcamp and marketing a label is that, and you don't see this anywhere else, but when you go to the record label's Bandcamp page, you see all of their releases, right? Like laid out face forward. Even if a record label owned their own record store, they wouldn't be able to do it this nicely. And so to me, a record label that's killing it is when I go to their Bandcamp and I see all of these records and I want every single one of them. They're so beautiful. Or you click on the merch tab and it shows you all their vinyl or all their cassettes. And, that's, to me, I love that.
I think we're seeing a theme here in the fact that we've talked about in both vinyl and Bandcamp, that if you want to appeal to people, you've got to make aesthetically pleasing products. I mean, it just seems to be like, and that even comes from like how you set up your Bandcamp page. It has to be aesthetically pleasing. It has to be something that makes people go, "Oh, that's really cool. I want to own that," just to have it look at it and see how aesthetically pleasing it is. I think that's a really good way of thinking about this for sure.
And you don't need to be obsessed with design like I am. And this is not a subjective opinion. This is true across the board for anything that we buy. We have to kind of tap into the irrational mind of people, and artists out there forget that people don't need their music. We don't need their music. Like, we have other musicians we can listen to. So you really need to make sure that you're providing value, or you're convincing. Sorry, let me rephrase that, because of course we need musicians. My favorite bands, I need them. If my favorite bands didn't exist, I would die. So I do need those artists, but I've been convinced that I need those artists, and I'm convinced daily that I need those, or weekly or monthly, or whenever they come out with a new record, that I need that record. I need that album. And so I think fans or music artists take it for granted, and even record labels, that all you have to do is release something and they will come. If you build it, they'll come. It's not true. You got to you got to give them value, give value in their life. I don't mean value in like the buy one, get one free value. I mean, it's like that feeling, when you get a record in the mail, it's like you're seeing the postman walk down the street with your cardboard box, and you're there waiting, and then you have a knife ready, and then you open it and you sniff it and you put it on the table. Like, to me, it's like we need to tap into that more. Don't take that for granted. I know it's hard. Like, not everybody's going to be waiting for our records in that same way, but just don't take that for granted.
I love that, man. You're making me want to go to the record store right now after this.
Me too. I know. I miss my records right now. I want to go downstairs and talk.
That's right. Yeah, no, I think that's 100% true. And so one of the things I consult with a lot of artists, and we haven't had too many artists who've pressed vinyl, or they've cassettes or CDs or anything like that. But we have a lot of artists who do really well on Spotify, and what we tell them a lot of times is that if you're not because the Spotify the visual framework that Spotify has, like, it doesn't really value album art as much. It doesn't value singles. I mean, it's a tiny little speck square, and honestly, we tell artists to save that money on the single cover or the album cover and put it into like a visualizer, for example. And so I think what's really cool is if you do go this route and you do go into pressing physical media, like cassettes or vinyl, it is important and imperative that you create something that looks cool, that represents the music, and honestly, that's kind of like why vinyl is so fun, is because you get to have that experience, like you said, of looking at the art, smelling the vinyl, putting it on the turntable, watching the needle hit it for the first time, watching the music come out, and you feel the music come out of the speakers, especially if you have a good setup. And I think that's why vinyl has had such a resurgence, is because it is that experience, and it is that level of detail. It is that piece of art that you are buying along with the music. You're getting two forms of art there.
I completely agree. And another little trick, I've done this on my last two records, and I hope to do it again, is you can create somewhat unique art for your vinyl that's different from your digital. So you're right. I mean, digital on Spotify is not that important, although I still do, when I'm testing out artwork, I do add it to iTunes and see what it looks like on the phone. I think that is important a little bit. But you're right, it's not as important, especially if you're doing a single and you're getting placed on a playlist. Nobody will ever see that artwork. And so I do agree with that. But one of the things I've been experimenting with is like different art for the vinyl, different art for the digital cover, and even different art for the CD and the cassette as well. On my last 2 records ago, I did that, and it was really fun. I mean, when you put them all together, you could see that they're very, very similar. They're just laid out differently, like each one is bespoke. And I just think that people who recognize that would appreciate it. I don't think the average fan would notice it, but I think some people would appreciate it.
Oh no, I 100% agree. Tyler the Creator, I believe was either 2023 or 2022 was the number one most purchased vinyl hip hop artist. And so one of the things he did that was really unique was he put out an album in 2022, I believe, and there were 8 different album covers for the vinyl. And so what happened was his fans, who are rabid and cult like, they bought one of each in their collection. Oh, I've got this one, I've got this one, and you see them taking pictures with all their vinyl collection of this new album. And if you have fans that love that stuff and you can tap into them, I mean, it's not only a lot of money, but it's a lot of product being moved. I mean, it's phenomenal, and your stuff's getting out there, and you're creating deep connections with those fans through vinyl.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you don't even need to be Taylor Swift or Tyler the Creator to do that. I mean, that definitely helps. And I'm not sure I would suggest to most labels to go and do alternate covers, because that would be very, very costly. But there is, I mean, I know what you're saying, and I think you can tap into that collector mindset. I've bought tapes and records from artists that are, absurd, and it's like over the top and opulent, and I've paid a lot of money, that are absolute no names that nobody really would know who they are. But I do it because they somehow tapped into that collect all four mindset. And I like the way the spines look all together. So you can tap into that without actually having to feel like, oh no, I need to do what, Taylor did on Folklore Midnights or something. Like that's unattainable.
All right, so final question of this part of the interview section. What would you say is the biggest thing holding back small record labels today?
Well, I think any business needs to give itself time to build an audience, to iterate, to learn what their customers want, to learn what they want to offer. Some people don't want to get involved with sync licensing, or don't want to get into vinyl like we're talking about. They're not passionate about vinyl like you and I are, but they feel like they have to. And so it takes them a couple of years to realize, you know what? I know this great label that were all tapes. And then they decided to try vinyl, and it was a disaster for them. And then they went back to tapes, and they'll never do vinyl again. And so it takes time to do that. And I think the biggest challenge is that record label owners are not able to stick with it long enough to find their groove. And I mean, I was running my label. I had been 7 years, and I was at my breaking point. It was just completely alienated from a bigger community. And I just felt like why was there younger labels being more successful than me? And that's where I got the idea to start the Other Record Labels podcast, is to call these labels that I admired of all sizes and to ask them for advice. And that moment at the 7th year, that changed my life. And now it pivoted me in a completely different direction while still being able to do other things and working full-time in music. And that was 6 years ago, I think, or more. Yeah, that was 6 years ago. So it's like, for me, it's been a 13-year process, 14-year process of just kind of iterating and doing more things and doing less things. And so I think it's challenging for record labels to make zero in streaming and to rack up credit card debt. I say to take a risk on vinyl. Well, that's hard to do when you have to put it on a credit card. And so, it's challenging to stick with it long enough to see it through, because every business needs time. It really does. And so if you can figure out a way to work your full-time job, by the way, any independent artist, any record label, it's okay to work a full-time job that's not in the music industry. That's very normal. Lots of actors are doing it and actresses are doing it. Lots of musicians, even some of your favorite musicians, even award-winning musicians also work at a coffee shop or work as web developers. So work to support your music and maybe cut down to 80% to 70%. And 13 years later, you can cut down to 0% and work 100% of the time. But it just takes time. And I think it's a real challenge that people aren't able to stick with it.
Hey everybody, so obviously it's amazing to have a record label, and it's amazing to have vinyl, it's amazing to have Bandcamp, but the thing is, none of that's really important if you do not have good music to put on Bandcamp, to put on vinyl, to get yourself pitched to record labels or to start your own record label. You need good music first, right? And so that's one of the things I think is really cool about this podcast is if you do have good music, well, you're home scot-free. You can start doing all these things. But a lot of you don't have great music. And I'll tell you, I hear a lot of demos all the time for what we do at Rhynestone. And, the number one thing I think I see in the demo independent musician scene of people trying to take it to the next level is they don't have good musicians who know how to play their music. And so what do I mean by that? And what I mean is a lot of people, what they do is they try to get their friend, they try to get their neighbor, or they know some guy who plays drums, and but then that drummer doesn't have the right, he plays great, but he doesn't have the right mic setup for his stuff, doesn't have the right room. The bass player plays great live, maybe he plays at church or something like that, and the bass player just isn't fit for that type of music. And then maybe you find someone who mixes, and it's somebody who's going to a less than stellar academic program for mixing, and they actually don't have no idea what they're doing. If you know there's some programs out there a little shady. And so what ends up happening is you release something and you're so proud of it, and then people just don't respond. Not only do they not like it, but they don't hate it either. And I think that's really the worst. If you can get a hate response, at least that's something you can work with. But a lot of times you'll show people that kind of music and they're just, whatever. And so the reason I'm telling you this is that's what Rhynestone's here for. Rhynestone has a team. We have over 25 musicians on our roster. I mean, we have everything from strings, horns. We just hired a theremin player. We have drums, we have bass, we have guitars. Anything you need to help take your music to that next level, we have it. And that's why it's really important to get high quality players to play your stuff and to flesh out your musical ideas. And it's also important to have good mixing and mastering, which we have as well at Rhynestone. So next time, before you write a song, you write this great song and you start bringing in people you don't really know and it doesn't really work and mesh, I want you guys to come and hit up Rhynestone first. Let's see what we can do to help you take your music to that next level. Let's get our musicians involved. Let's take our music and let's take it to that next level. And that's what we want to do here at Rhynestone. So what I'm going to offer you guys today is I want you to hit me up and we'll do a free hour-long consultation on your music. It's a totally free process. Normally I charge $150 for this, but I'm going to do it for free. All you need to do is email me at rhynstonemusic@gmail.com. That's Rhynestone, RHYNESTONE, music@gmail.com. I want you to email me the word new demo. So that's NEWDEMO. And send that again to rhynstonemusic@gmail.com, and we'll give you an hour free consultation to see how we can help you out with your music. Because at the end of the day, we want to see you shine. We want to see you take your music to that next level. We want to help you, grow and thrive as an artist. So if we can do that. So we have a quick little rapid fire section, and we'll wrap this podcast up. Sound good? All right. So the first question is, what is the last album that blew your mind?
I was just listening to it recently. Nils Fromm, All Melody, is the last record. I mean, that's the last newest record that blew my mind. Again, I'm going to be walking down the street later today and be like, oh, why didn't I say this record?
Always. What's a label that deserves more attention?
Well, I've already shout out at Geographic North, so I won't give them another plug. And so I will plug my friend Jason's label, Painted Blonde, which is a cool indie rock, lo-fi indie rock label. And they haven't released something in a very long time. So that's kind of a call to action for them.
I love it. We always here for calling people out. If you lost all of your gear and had to start over with only $1,000, what would you get?
All my gear? Well, okay. Yeah, all of my gear, and I got $1,000. Um, Obviously, like DAWs are free, or get whatever DAW you can, but you really need to have a mic and a preamp and a converter or whatever. So if you can, I would get the cheapest mic for $100, a condenser mic that I could find, and I would get a preamp, a one channel preamp. I always like the old school Focusrite stuff, the blue and yellow stuff. The ISA-1 or the ISA-2 is under $1,000. I'm probably spending my budget, but the thing is that, this speaks to somebody else had this hot take online a few years ago that was like, every indie artist needs a mic and a converter. Like, they need the ability to record themselves. For so long, it was like there were people who had home studios and there were people who had professional recording studios. I'm a musician. I don't need to worry about that. I'm not a nerd. But like, every musician really needs to record themselves. It's a great way to write, and it's a great way to improve your playing, your soloing, your singing. You don't have to necessarily like buy every plugin and mix your own records. But yeah, I think we could do a lot today with a cheap mic but a good preamp though.
Okay.
I'd spend all the money on the preamp.
I like it. I respect it. What is a label that you look up to?
When I was a kid, the very first time I ever heard of a record label was Tooth and Nail Records. And I just remember, we were only exposed to what was on the radio or the goody two shoe music our parents would let us listen to. And so to hear a record label that was doing weird music, it was just foreign to me. And it was really, a lot of it was, the music was so weird, I couldn't listen to it. And then some of it was more accessible, and then some of it was in the middle. And it really stretched me as a music fan. And it was the first time that I just wanted that label logo on my backpack or on my binder. And Fat Records would be the same for a lot of people as well. It was just the first time you ever shared your identity with a brand.
And then the last question is, what does the public get wrong about running a record label?
Well, I would just rewind and listen to the first half hour of our conversation. But, we are not, I don't care what the public thinks about record labels because, well, that's not true. I just think that indie record labels, as I mentioned, are not, they're not a different way to do a major label. They're not the same as major labels at all. It's a completely different beast. It's a collective, it's a community, it's an individual passionate music fan that is curating something like a radio show or like I think that the idea, and I feel like maybe you came to this call with this mindset of like that all labels are the same, there's just some good and some bad. To me, it's different than that. It's there's these labels, and then there's this different thing that is forming here that has nothing to do with that, aside from the fact that we release music.
Well, Scott, I gotta say, man, you've given me a lot of things to think about with record labels. I definitely had a different vision of what they were coming into this, and I'm gonna do a lot more research. And I'm excited, man. I think the way you talk about record labels makes me excited. I think the future's bright for artists, and I think that's great. So, Scott, before we get off,
I think you're going to start a record label before the end of the year.
You know what? You know what? You wouldn't be the first guest to make a prophecy and then it come true. So, so I wouldn't be surprised. So Scott, here, the floor is yours. Anything you want to promote? How can people find you? What's the best way to get in contact with you? Floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, my website is otherrecordlabels.com. And anything we talked about today, whether it was Bandcamp or pressing vinyl or just starting a record label or engaging with record labels if you're an artist, all of those resources are indexed on my website on the main page. You can search by topic. And, there's a lot of independent artists that will steal information from us to run their own music careers. I mean, the reality is that we're all record labels as independent artists. We're just the only artist on the roster is ourselves. And so there's a lot of great information that you can come over and get from otherrecordlabels.com, whether it's the podcast or the YouTube channel or the articles, or we have a bunch of free downloads too that you can access. So I'd love it if people came and checked that out. And I also love it if people started their own record label. We can't have enough.
I love it. Well, thank you, Scott, for being on the Rhynestone podcast, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Hey, everybody, that is our show. I would love to thank Scott Orr from Other Record Labels for showing up, for talking about record labels. I wouldn't say he changed my mind on my view on record labels, but he definitely opened my horizons. There are record labels out there that do treat artists well, that do take care of artists. You just have to be careful, and you just have to know what you're looking for and what you're getting into. That being said, the things that we learned about Bandcamp and about vinyl and about all the different ways that you can make money and make leveraged, you can leverage your music in the music industry is phenomenal, and honestly it's just excellent. And I really am thankful that Scott came on and really talked about a lot of this stuff with us. So I want you guys to go check out Other Record Labels here on YouTube. I want you guys to go and check out Scott's podcast. He's got all sorts of great episodes. His content is really good. Go download his free toolkit online about how to start a record label, even if you're not interested in starting a record label per se. If you're an independent musician, kind of by default, you are a record label because you're putting out your own stuff. So it's really good. It helps you figure out kind of what your goals are and gives you a little bit more of a business mind about your own music. So I highly recommend that. So our intro and outro music is, of course, Target Rockstar by Maddie Music Madness. Such a good song. Then we also have, for our first bump, we have Half a Heart by Chris Ray King. For our second bump, we have, what do we have? We have Mrs. Claus by Zach Stitch. All three of these songs were fully produced by Rhynestone Productions. So drums, bass, guitars, all that type of stuff was us. If you have any questions at all, hit us up at rhynestonemusic@gmail.com. Leave your comments below. And Rhynestone is RHYNESTONE music@gmail.com. And then you can find me. My name is Banner Driskell. You can find me anywhere on social media at Banner Driskell Media. That's BANNER DRISKELL Media, MEDIA. Wherever you do social media. I'm mostly on Instagram these days, but whatever. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.